Welcome, my dear friends of jazz music. My name is Ray Alexander, and thanks for joining me on this very special day, which is September the 14th of 2022, on which day I've invited singer, poet, and perhaps part-time actress Mira Black, who is originally from Winnipeg but is now living in Calgary. And every now and then she comes back to her city and does a great jazz and poetry and folk show. It's usually quite a mixed bag, and she's going to be performing this coming Sunday, that is the 18th, at the St. Norbert Arts Centre at 100 Ruins du Monastère Street, and that's Pembina Highway South. Just look it up on the internet and you'll find a direction, and you can book tickets online as well, or make a phone call. And I last interviewed Mira, I think just before COVID started, and that was on my radio show right at CJUM studios at the University Centre at the University of Manitoba, and we had a very interesting dialogue, and it's nice to see her again today. And in preparation, or as a prelude to her performance on Sunday at 7 o'clock, I wanted to ask her a few questions to give you people a good idea of what to expect. Well, first of all, Mira, please describe the nature of your present concert or recital so that people can fully understand what they can expect when they go out on Sunday.
Thank you, Ray, for the invitation. Hello, everyone. My name is Mira Black, and I am a Winnipeg artist who is performing at the St. Norbert Arts Centre this coming Sunday, September 18th. I'm bringing the launch of my new offering called Journey of Ashes, which is an expression of the hero's journey from the poet, such as I am. It's full of spoken word, original jazz compositions. I'll be playing with Gilles Fournier, Adam Werner on drums, Evan Miles on piano, and my friends Amber Epp will sit in, and Marco Castillo will sit in. It's going to be a beautiful homecoming, my first concert since March 2020. Yeah, so this is a storytelling concert experience. So I'll be connecting with the audience through a kind of oracle, a kind of shaman's tale, the battle warriors dancing around the fire, speaking of the hero. There are a lot of original songs that the band will play with me. It isn't a play, not quite the same way as you might think, although I daydream of being on Broadway, of course, with a full budget. But what I'm doing here is quite intimate. I'm telling the story of the stories. So a lot of symbiotic energy between myself and my audience. It's very special to me.
And the second question I have for you is, what do you really like about performing in public? I know many people feel that it gives them a great inspiration. It makes them sing or perform better than ever. But there are many people like Barbara Streisand, who I can think of readily, who would rather just simply record and not be in front of an audience because it creates a great deal of anxiety. What is your thoughts on that?
Live. You know, it really is that symbiotic, energetic. I really attune to the stories of bards and minstrels. And like many of us, the changes that happened in that thing that we just kind of squashed our way through from 2020 on changed me in many ways, but mostly in the gratitude. I really took for granted being able to sit with my people and my connections and the things that I hear in my head. yeah, I mean, applause, of course, it's wonderful, and my ego loves it to be like, yeah, you. But it's really about your presence and witnessing.
And this is a question I meant to ask you the last time I spoke with you, and I'm surprised I didn't. But who are some of your musical influences? And there must be several, but I'm very interested in knowing that, male and female for that matter, but I'm sure they're mostly female.
So Kurt Elling, who is a Chicago-based, now New York, of course, bound beatnik artist, jazz, extremely disciplined jazz musician and a vocalist. I don't want to call him a jazz singer, which is a beautiful thing, and I honor it myself. He is an instrumentalist with the instrument of his voice, truly a connoisseur. Not only do I, just the sound of the timbre and the tone of his instrument, of his voice, and I've also had the privilege of having a master class with him at the U of M School of Music, and he taught me some really cool things that I didn't fully understand at the time, but just about that connection and holding your audience enthralling, and also the way that he uses poetry and lyric. He really expresses himself through and honors the lyric as well. It isn't just a throwaway, which is, by design, sort of many drummers probably don't necessarily attach themselves to the lyric itself, to the poetry itself. Many do, I'm sure, but I'm just saying, like, Kurt really taught me the importance of what you're saying as the vocalist, as the one who's offering up the lyric. And finally, this is like the Kurt Elling show all of a sudden. But finally, Kurt Elling is also a theologist, and he speaks about the divine in a really contemporary way, in a very devotional way, and he sings with devotion, and he taught me many things about that by his very presence.
What would be your ideal project to perform and possibly even record if it was economically feasible? I know I've often envisioned this person with that orchestra or with doing duets with that singer, and I've actually made recommendations to various artists that I've met in the past, and most of them usually think that they're great ideas, but there's always that but, and they'll say to me, well, it depends on what my producer will say and whether or not we have the money to hire so-and-so. But I'm always interested in hearing what people would really, like to do. And I'll just give you an example. In my case, if my ideal interview for the time being might be either Clint Eastwood or Bill Clinton, because they both have a jazz bent, and I think that would be an interesting time. And I was hoping to get Tony Bennett actually before he developed dementia, but I think it might be too late. But what's yours, Mira?
I mean, Broadway, baby. This show wants a triple threat on the front. It really longs for an actor, dancer, full band, the ability to create a stage within a stage. So as I will on Sunday, and as I have done so far, I describe the characters that are truly a dissociative metaphor for someone who's moving through mental health to enlightenment, to awakened. So we are survivors of many things, and then we have this opportunity to become victorious, to wake up through the fire. And an ideal project would have that really unfold in a beautiful way with sets and full choir, especially my finale. I really hear, and I recorded it, just me, many times. I'll add a clip in here for Ray's show of that recording that was produced and arranged and supported by Tanya Gillespie from Duncan, BC. Yeah, and the other thing that arises in this moment, when I downloaded this play this offering, this show, and the pieces and the music and the spoken word and the monologues from it, I saw myself on a massive outdoor stage in India. Now, I'm half East Indian, half Scottish, and there's something about the rising of the matriarch, the healing of the masculine, and the connectivity and the balance and the symbiosis of relationship in humans of all genders and attunements and attainments, and where you resonate, where we come from love. And there's a thing about my ancestry and my connection with India that is so brutalized and so much in need of salving and understanding and support. So yeah, that's the long answer to if I had all the money in the world, what I would do. Number 5.
And finally, do you employ or utilize any special vocal technique to preserve your voice for future recordings and concerts? And I'll give you one example. Tony Bennett once said in an interview that he used a special technique called bel canto, where you, I think, practice for the most part at a lower register, and you don't really strain your voice, but it strengthens it at the same time. I just wonder if you have any special techniques that you use to save your voice for the future.
He talks about Tony Bennett, who uses the bel canto approach, which I believe is an operatic approach. And it speaks of the opening of the diaphragm and having like a tube through to the top of your head, to the crown chakra, opening. And so I took lessons from a Winnipeg teacher named Diane Berger when my voice became really strained, because I was a rock and roll star for a while. And I just toured every day, sang every day, drove in buses. And at that time, in my beginnings in the 90s, people were still smoking in bars, and I smoked. And now I don't. I do my best to live clean and sober and eat right and speak softly and use my diaphragm and my breath. So the breath as a vocalist is vital. But also what Diane Berger taught me was that the voice and the notes don't come from the meat in my throat. It isn't the vocal cords that the notes come from, she teaches. The note and the expression comes from the thought of it. And then opening. And there's a vulnerability in that, the diaphragmatic opening to the full channel of what that voice, the voice. People say, oh, you have such a gift, Mira, and thank you, and that's beautiful, and I'm grateful that you feel that way. And I learned through my own healing and my own work and my lessons and study that my voice is a gift from something beyond me. That's my belief. So yeah, I do my best to stay grounded and really use my breath and open to that channel and notice where that mechanism of my instrument is beyond me.
I'd like to thank Mira Black for joining me today on this day and sharing her thoughts about her new show and some of the influences that have affected her to become a jazz singer. She cited Joni Mitchell and Kurt Elling as two major influences, and I want to play a couple of tunes one by each, and then perhaps two more songs thereafter by those people's influences, because often I find that younger performers, certainly find the right person to influence them in a certain direction, but they don't always follow it all the way through and see where those influences came from. Everybody's coming from somewhere. Frank Sinatra came from Bing Crosby and Louis Armstrong and Billie Holiday. And those people probably came from the great blues singers like Bessie Smith and Lonnie Johnson and so on. So I'd like to share with you my thoughts on all this. Now, first of all, Joni Mitchell probably my favorite jazz album that she's ever recorded is definitely an album that came out in 1978-79. It's a tribute to the great composer and bassist Charles Mingus. And she actually got to spend some time with him just before he died. And he had written several, of course, very influential instrumentals that didn't have words to them. And he asked Joni if she would do as Annie Ross and other singers before them had done with instrumental themes. And probably the master of this art form called vocalese was John Hendricks. Now, Annie Ross was a person who toiled with the hippest jazz vocal group I've ever heard in my life. They were in the late 50s and early 60s, Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. And when Annie Ross left the group, Yolande Bavin replaced her. Now, Annie Ross took two instrumental hits. One was called Farmer's Market and the other Twisted. And in both cases, she added words. And Joni Mitchell did the same with Charlie Mingus tunes on this album, Mingus. And the one I like especially, and it's become a jazz standard by now, is called Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, which is a tribute to saxophonist Lester Young. So I'd like you to listen to her words and how she phrases, and I'm sure that she had Annie Ross in mind.
When Charlie speaks of Lester, you know someone great has come. The sweetest swinging music man had a porky pig hat on, a bright star in a dark age when the bandstands had 1,000 ways of refusing a black man admission. Black musician, in those days they put him in an underdog position. Sellers and chitlins, when Lester took him a wife, arm in arm went black and white and some saw red, and drove them from their hotel bed. Love is never easy. It's short of the hope we have for happiness, bright and sweet. Love is never easy street. Now we are black and white, embracing out in the lunatic New York night. It's very unlikely we'll be driven out of town, or be hung in a tree. That's unlikely tonight. These crowds are happy and loud. Children are up dancing in the streets. In the sticky middle of the night, summer serenade of taxi horns and fun arcades, where right or wrong under neon every feeling goes on. For you tunes they have been handed day by day, generations on down.
Joni Mitchell from 1978 and her terrific jazz album called Mingus, and you heard Jaco Pastorius on electric bass, Wayne Shorter was on soprano sax, and Herbie Hancock on electric piano on Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. Well, I think that Joni Mitchell's main influence in jazz singers could have been Annie Ross. On one of her very early albums, Court and Spark, I believe it was called, which I don't have anymore, she recorded a song that Annie Ross co-wrote. And Annie took an instrumental theme by a saxophone player by the name of Wardo Gray and added words to it, and the song became Twisted. And Joni Mitchell actually made a recording of that, and she did a very fine job. She almost kind of reminds me of Annie Ross when she sings it. I want you to now to listen to her mentor in that endeavor.
My analyst told me that I was right out of my head the way he described it. He said I'd be better dead than live. I didn't listen to his jive. I knew all along he was all wrong, and I knew that he thought I was crazy, but I'm not. Oh no.
Oh no.
My analyst told me that I was right out of my head. He said I need treatment, but I'm not that easily led. He said I was the type that was most inclined when out of his sight to be out of my mind. And he thought I was nuts. No more ifs or ands or buts. Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no.
They say as a child I appeared a little bit wild with all my crazy ideas, but I knew what was happening. I knew I was a genius. What's so strange when you know that you're a wizard at 3? I knew that this was meant to be. But I heard little children were supposed to sleep tight. That's why I drank a fifth of vodka one night. My parents got frantic, didn't know what to do. But I saw some crazy scenes before I came to. Now, do you think I was crazy? I may have been only 3, but I was swinging. They all left at Graham Bell. They all left at Edison and also at Einstein. So why should should I feel sorry if they just couldn't understand the reasoning and the logic that went on in my head? I had a brain, it was a pain though, to let them laugh at me when I refused to ride on all the double-decker buses, all because there was no driver on the top.
This chick is twisted. What's the matter with her?
My analyst told me that I was right out of my head, the way he described it. He said I'd be better dead than alive. I didn't listen to his jive. I knew all along he was all wrong, and I knew that he thought I was crazy, but I'm not. Oh no.
Oh, no.
My analyst told me that I was right out of my head, but I said, dear doctor, I think that it's you instead, 'cause I have got a thing that's unique and new. It proves that I'll have the last laugh on you, 'cause instead of one head, I got two. And you know, two heads are better than one.
Now, the other influence that Mira suggested was Kurt Elling, who's probably the finest jazz singer in the world right now. There are a couple other people I greatly admire as well, including Gregory Porter and Giacomo Gates and Alan Harris. But I think that Kurt Elling is in a class all of his own. He not only interprets songs very well, but he also writes songs, just as his mentor did, Mark Murphy. And we'll get to Mark right after this piece. Now, if I had to choose one album by Kurt Elling, and I have a few of them that really appeal to me the most, it's one that he cut in 2009. It's called Dedicated to You, and it's actually a tribute to the music of John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman. And one of the songs on the album was written by Billy Strayhorn, who was Duke Ellington's alter ego. He played piano and he did arrangements and composed songs for the Duke Ellington Orchestra. He's the man who's most famous for Take the A Train, but he also wrote so many beautiful ballads, including Something to Live For and Chelsea Bridge and Satin Doll. But this is the best song he ever wrote, and it's a difficult song to sing. I was astonished when I heard Lady Gaga sing it with Tony Bennett. You know, usually it requires a person who's lived, you know, a life of some sort, you know, who's been through a lot, and perhaps Kurt Elling has. Nobody can sing this song better than Mark Murphy, but I thought Lady Gaga did a terrific version. And Nat King Cole also does a beautiful interpretation. But let's listen to what Kurt Elling does on a song that Strayhorn is most famous for, called Lush Life.
Used to visit all the very gay places, those come what may places, where one relaxes on the axis of the wheel of life, to get the feel of life from jazz and cocktails. The girls I knew had sad and sullen gray faces, with distingué traces that used to be there. You could see where they'd been washed away by too many through the day. 12 o'clock tales. Then you came along with your siren song to tempt me to madness. I thought for a while that your poignant smile was tinged with the sadness of a great love for me. Yet I was wrong again. I was
Only last year everything seemed so sure. Now life is awful again. A trough full of hearts could only be a bore. A week in Paris should ease the bite of it. I just care to smile in spite of it. I'll forget you, I will, while yet you are still burning inside my brain. Romance is mush, stifling those who strive. I will live a lush life in some small night. And there I'll be while I rot with the rest of those whose lives are lonely.
Once again, that was Kurt Elling in 2009 with Lawrence Hopgood, who was his accompanist for many years on piano, and the classic song Lush Life by Billy Strayhorn. Now, I don't do this very often, but let's go to Mark Murphy's tribute album to Nat King Cole. He actually made 2 records, and this goes to 1983. And he only has a guitar player in this case accompanying him. I believe his name is Joe Loduca. And compare the 2 voices. Now, there's no doubt that Mark Murphy has the richer voice. I think he was one of the greatest singers of all time, period, not just a jazz singer. And I think that most jazz singers that I've ever met agree with me that he had no peers. I mean, Kurt Elling is the modern day Mark Murphy, make no mistake about it, but he doesn't have the daring and the voice that Murphy had. And you're about to hear that. And if you like Murphy's voice, there's one album I really suggest you. I was going to play a cut from it. It's a desert island piece called The Dream. And on it are some beautiful interpretations of Estate and Since I Fell for You and Laura and Yesterday When I Was Young. Many great songs on it. But I'm going to compare the 2 men with this song. Here he is with Lush Life.
But her heart belongs to just one. Her heart belongs to Tangerine.
the very gay places, those come what may places, where one relaxes on the axis of the wheel of life to get the feel of life from jazz and cocktails. The girls I knew had sad and sullen gray faces with distingué traces that used to be there. You could see where they'd been washed away by too many through the day 12 o'clock tales. Then you came along with your siren song to tempt me to madness. I thought for a while that your poignant smile was tinged with the sadness of a great love for me. Ah, yes, I was wrong. Again I was wrong. Life is lonely again. And only last year everything seemed so sure. Now life is awful again. A trough full of hearts could only be a bore. Well, a week in Paris will ease the bite of it. All I care is to smile in spite of it. I'll forget you, I will, while yet you are still burning inside my brain. Romance is mush, stifling those who strive. I'll live a lost life, some small dive, and there I'll be while I rot with the rest of those whose lives are lonely.
Now that's the version I prefer. Mark Murphy has certainly a way of really getting inside a lyric, sort of like Frank Sinatra. I haven't heard too many singers do that as well as those two singers. I think Sarah Vaughan was probably the best female singer of doing that, and Barbra Streisand is another. But here is my very favorite contemporary singer, and I'm talking about, including jazz singers, Mira, and I hope that you like her as much as I do. So you're going to get a third version of the song. I made mention of her earlier. And this is an album that she did with her very good friend Tony Bennett in 2014. They made two albums, and the other one was 2021. It just came out late last year, and sadly, it might be the last time you'll hear him on record, unless there's some stuff in the vault that Columbia might release one day. Because I understand that he actually did some duet sessions with his guitar player, Grace Sargent, but they've never been released. So let's hope for that. But maybe some miracle will come along in the next year or two, and there'll be a discovery that allows his dementia condition to go away. Because I've never heard a voice age as well as Tony Bennett. And I think he was a great inspiration to the woman you're about to listen to, Lady Gaga. So here's one more cover or rendition of Lush Life by a very young singer, but probably an old soul. Mira, thank you for coming on board our good ship, Jazzland Now. My name is Ray Alexander, and I hope that we will reconnect when your next project comes about. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this rendition, and I hope that Lady Gaga will serve as an inspiration for you to one day perhaps sing this song in public and possibly even record it, because I think it's a beautiful song made to measure for a singer like yourself.
To visit all the very gay places, those come what may places, where one relaxes on the axis of the wheel of life to get the feel of life from jazz and cocktails. The girls I knew had sat and selling gray faces with distinguished traces that used to be there. You could see where they'd been washed away by too many through the day. 12 o'clock tales. You came along with your siren song to tempt me to madness. I thought for a while that your poignant smile was tinged with the sadness of a great love for me. Oh yes, I was wrong again. I was wrong. Life is lonely again, and only last year everything seems so sure. Now life is awful again, a trough full of hearts could only be a boy. A week in Paris could ease the bite of it. All I care is to smile in spite of it. I'll forget you. While yet you are still burning inside my brain. Romance is much stifling those who strive. I'll live a lush life.
asks me. If you have any questions, I'd be grateful to answer them. You can put them in the chat or DM me if you feel that it's something private. And if you want a ticket for St. Norbert Center, September 18th, this coming Sunday, 7 p.m. to about 9 p.m., featuring Gilles Fournier on the bass, Adam Warner on the drums, Evan Miles on piano, special guests Amber Epp and Marco Castillo, and me. Just go to the link that I'll attach all over this thing. I'm sure that Ray will have it attached as well. You can Google my name, and it's really easy to find me, or St. Norbert's Art Center will also have it. Tickets are listed at $25, and there is a donation component. It's about you and reconnecting on the other side of this ride, my friends. Yeah, pay what you can and just arrive. See you soon. Bye for now.